The ballroom shimmered in gold and glass, laughter bouncing off the crystal chandeliers. Women in sequined gowns leaned in close to one another. Men in tailored suits clinked glasses, and the air was thick with perfume, pride, and polished smiles. I sat quietly at a corner table, my silk blouse smooth against my skin, my heels tucked neatly under my chair. From where I sat, I could see everything. Yet no one seemed to see me. "Is she on the guest list?" someone whispered as they glanced in my direction. Another woman, her diamond necklace catching the light, gave a polite but dismissive smile before turning her back. I'd grown used to this particular kind of invisibility. They assumed I didn't belong here. My phone buzzed in my clutch, a silent vibration that pulled my attention for a second. A text from my assistant. "They're about to announce the top donor. Are you ready?" I smiled faintly, tucking the phone away. Ready? I had been ready for years. I lifted my champagne flute, the cool glass pressing into my fingertips, and watched the stage as the host, a man with a booming voice and perfect teeth, stepped up to the microphone. The room hushed instantly. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying, "tonight we celebrate generosity, and I'm proud to announce our highest donor of the evening." My heart beat steady, not from nerves, but from anticipation. This was the moment they would finally have to look at me. I wasn't always this composed. There was a time when the idea of walking into a room like that fundraiser would have terrified me. I was 22 the last time I let people make me feel small. It was a family gathering in Chicago, the kind where everyone arrived polished and perfect, as if we were auditioning for a commercial about success. My cousins compared internships on Wall Street, my uncle bragged about his son's scholarship to Yale, and I sat there in my thrift store dress, trying to make myself invisible. At one point, my father's friend, Mr. Carlyle, leaned across the table and asked with a half smile, "So, Emily, what's your big plan? Going to marry rich, or just figure it out as you go?" The laughter that followed burned hotter than the coffee in my cup. My hands trembled so badly, I had to set it down before I spilled. I wanted to scream that I had plans, that I was capable of more than they could imagine, but the words caught in my throat like sharp glass. Later that evening, my grandmother found me standing by the window, blinking back tears. She pressed something small and cool into my hand, a silver locket with tiny initials etched into the back. "This was mine when I was your age," she said softly. "I wore it every time someone underestimated me. And every time, it reminded me to prove them wrong, not with words, but with results." I unclasped the chain and slipped it around my neck, the metal settling against my skin like a quiet promise. That night, I made a vow. I would not wait for anyone to believe in me. I would build something that spoke louder than their doubts. I would never again stand in a room and feel invisible. So when I left that house, suitcase in hand and only a few $100s to my name, I wasn't just walking away from family expectations. I was walking toward the version of myself I had yet to meet. The city was cold and the future uncertain, but as I fingered the edge of that locket, I felt something steady inside me. A resolve. A whisper. "Prove them wrong, Emily." And that whisper became the fire that carried me forward. Chicago was harsh, but it taught me how to survive. My first apartment was a tiny studio with peeling paint and a heater that rattled louder than the L train. I worked mornings at a coffee shop, evenings as a receptionist at a law firm, and spent late nights teaching myself everything I could about finance, investments, and business management. There were days when I thought I'd break. Days when I walked home in the freezing wind, my shoes soaked from slush, whispering to myself just to stay focused. But in those moments, I'd press the locket against my chest and remember the promise I had made. One of my first breakthroughs came when Mrs. Adler, a senior partner at the law firm, noticed how I stayed late, organizing case files far beyond my job description. One evening, she looked at me over her glasses and asked, "Why aren't you doing more than answering phones?" I hesitated, then told her the truth. I wanted to understand money. Not just earn it, but master it. To my surprise, instead of laughing, she leaned back in her chair and smiled. "Then start small," she said. "I'll give you reading lists and you'll tell me what you learn." That was the beginning. She became the first person outside my grandmother who believed in my mind. Week after week, I devoured books on economics, real estate, and investments. She quizzed me, pushed me, and slowly, the pieces began to make sense. I used every dollar I could save to take courses, to invest in tiny projects, buying old furniture at thrift shops, restoring it, and selling it online. It wasn't glamorous, but every profit felt like proof that I was moving forward. The nights were long. I fell asleep at my desk more than once, mascara smudged, coffee rings on my notebooks. But then came the small wins that fueled me. The first month I earned more from my side business than from my day jobs, the first client who trusted me to manage their portfolio, the first moment I realized I wasn't surviving anymore. I was building. Still, I kept quiet. When family called, I told them I was doing fine, nothing more. On social media, I posted photos of sunsets, not milestones. Let them think I was ordinary, struggling, maybe even failing. I didn't need their applause. My silence was my armor, my progress my secret. Years passed, and the girl in the thrift store dress transformed into a woman who could walk into any room, knowing she belonged, even if no one else believed it yet. By the time I was 30, I had investments spread across real estate, tech startups, and charitable foundations. My name was on contracts, never billboards. My influence was quiet, but my reach was growing. And through it all, the locket never left my neck. It reminded me of where I had started and why I was still moving forward. I wasn't ready to reveal myself yet, but I knew, deep down, the moment would come when. The ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton was a theater of wealth. Golden chandeliers spilled light across polished marble floors, violins hummed from the corner, and champagne flowed as easily as the laughter of the people who thought they owned the night. I slipped into my seat at a side table unnoticed. Around me, conversations buzzed like bees about hedge funds, vacation homes, and art collections I was certain had never been touched by their owners' hands. My gown was sleek but simple, navy silk with a neckline that didn't scream for attention. I didn't need it to. As servers passed with trays of caviar and sparkling wine, I listened. Mark gave 50 grand. One man boasted, patting his wife's jeweled hand. A woman leaned in to reply, "That's generous," but the Wilsons pledged 75. No one's topping that tonight. Their laughter swirled around me. Not a single glance in my direction. Not even curiosity. I was invisible again, but this time I welcomed it. From the stage, the host adjusted his bow tie and tapped the microphone. The crowd hushed instantly. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice rang out, "we are humbled tonight by the incredible generosity of so many of you. But one donor in particular has gone above and beyond. Their contribution will fund scholarships, research, and outreach for years to come." The room leaned forward collectively, eyes scanning for the obvious. Perhaps the Wilsons, maybe the Carlyles, maybe one of the CEOs seated at the front. The host smiled. "Please join me in recognizing our top donor of the evening, Ms. Emily Carter." My name. Clear. Unmistakable. For a moment, silence. The kind of silence that doesn't just fall. It drops like glass shattering. Heads swiveled. Conversations froze mid-breath. Dozens of eyes landed on me at once, wide with disbelief. The woman with the diamond necklace blinked rapidly, as if her lashes could rearrange the truth. The man who bragged about 50 grand stammered something under his breath. And my father's old friend, Mr. Carlyle, seated at the front, turned slowly, his mouth parted in stunned recognition. I rose from my chair, unhurried. The silk of my gown whispered against the floor as I crossed the room. With every step, I felt their stares digging into me, some heavy with shame, some sharp with envy, some hollow with regret. The host extended his hand as I joined him on stage. The applause began hesitantly, scattered and awkward, then grew louder as people scrambled to mask their astonishment with civility. I accepted the award, a crystal plaque that glittered beneath the lights, and leaned toward the microphone. "Thank you," I said simply. My voice didn't tremble. Years ago, I was told I didn't belong in rooms like this. That my only chance at success was to marry it, not make it. I carried those words with me for a long time. And tonight, I paused, letting the silence stretch, letting them all feel it. Tonight I stand here not because I wanted to prove them wrong, but because I wanted to prove myself right. A murmur rippled through the crowd, some nodding, some shifting uncomfortably. I stepped back, giving the host the stage again. But I didn't need to say more. The statement had already been made, not in words, but in presence. As I descended the steps, people I once knew rushed forward. The same ones who ignored me minutes earlier now scrambled for eye contact, for a smile, for a chance to rewrite the memory of their dismissal. I walked past them, calm, composed, each step deliberate. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. For the first time, they had no choice but to see me. The reception after the announcement was a different world. The same people who'd breezed past me earlier now circled like moths to a flame. Smiles stretched too wide, compliments rang too sweet, and every handshake carried the weight of belated recognition. Emily, I had no idea. You must tell me about your work. We should get coffee, catch up properly. I let their words flow past me like water over stone. For years, I had craved acknowledgement. Now, standing there, I realized I didn't need it. Recognition without respect meant nothing. Mr. Carlyle was the first to reach me. His face carried the same smug lines I remembered from my 20s, but now there was something new in his eyes. Unease. Emily, he began, voice tight, I must admit, I underestimated you. I tilted my head. You did more than underestimate me. You tried to define me. Marriage or failure, those were your options for me, remember? His jaw shifted. I was wrong. Yes, I said evenly. You were. And if you want to make it right, start by treating the women in your own life as capable of more than their last names. His silence was answer enough. One by one, others approached. An aunt who once told me I was too ambitious, a cousin who laughed at my early failures, colleagues who overlooked me for promotions. Each wore the same expression, a mixture of guilt and curiosity, as if wondering how I had slipped through the cracks of their expectations. To each of them, I offered the same response, not cruelty, not revenge, but boundaries. To my aunt, I said, encourage your daughter when she dreams. Don't shrink her to fit your comfort. To my cousin, I said, stop chasing approval and start chasing purpose. To an old colleague, I said, hire women not just for appearances, but for their brilliance. Their faces flushed, their nods stiff. Some bristled, some softened. But I didn't bend, not this time. It wasn't about holding grudges, it was about breaking cycles. If I had learned anything, it was that silence in the face of dismissal only feeds it. Tonight was proof that truth, when spoken with clarity, could redraw the balance of power. I left them with conditions, not demands. Change wasn't mine to enforce. It was theirs to choose. But I made it clear, access to me, to my time, to my trust, would require growth, respect, acknowledgement of who I had become. And if they couldn't manage that, then they could remain where they'd always placed me, invisible. Except now, invisibility would no longer hurt me. It would only protect me. By the time the fundraiser ended, the ballroom no longer felt like enemy ground. The chandeliers still sparkled, the music still swelled, but the air around me had shifted. People saw me now, not as a background figure, but as a force. I slipped outside into the crisp night air, my heels clicking softly against the stone steps. The city lights stretched wide before me, glittering like the future I had once only dreamed of. For a moment, I closed my eyes and let the cool breeze wash over me. In the quiet, I thought of that younger version of myself, the girl in the thrift store dress, cheeks burning with humiliation at a family dinner. I thought of the nights I worked until dawn, mascara smudged, fingers cramped from scribbling notes. I thought of the countless moments I almost gave up, and then I thought of my grandmother. I reached up, touched the silver locket resting against my collarbone, and opened it. Inside was the tiny engraving she'd placed there years ago. Strength is quiet, but undeniable. Tears pricked my eyes, but they weren't from sadness. They were from gratitude, for the fire that had carried me, for the woman I had become, for the grace to stand tall without bitterness. In the weeks that followed, some of the people I had confronted did begin to change. My aunt called her daughter brilliant instead of too much. My cousin enrolled in a program she had always wanted but never dared. Even Mr. Carlyle, from what I heard, started mentoring young women at his firm. Did they change because of me? Maybe. Or maybe I was just the mirror they finally needed. As for me, I no longer cared whether rooms accepted me or ignored me. I had built my own table, and those who pulled up a chair would do so with respect, or not at all. That night, before I slipped the locket back under my blouse, I whispered the words engraved inside, letting them settle in my chest like a heartbeat. Strength is quiet, but undeniable. And so was I.